Okay, can you hear me yet? Feel free to use the chat feature if you can. Yeah, all right, wonderful. Thank you, Kelly, and thanks, Kim. All right, I'm glad we were working. And sometimes with GoToWebinar, it can be a little touchy, and using different pairs of headphones and microphones gets a little tricky. So I am just going to do a quick introduction, and then I will hand over the presentation to our speaker today. So first of all, if this is your first TEL Talk, thank you for joining us. If this is not your first TEL Talk, welcome back. These are monthly webinars that are based on identified interest areas that we've heard both in our work in the field or from colleagues, just general questions that we know might be coming up in day-to-day work with early childhood. And so these are designed to be solutions-focused discussions for your questions about the early childhood field in Minnesota. We have a couple topics coming up. First, we will have in December, Sarah Benz-Koper, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association for the Education of Young Children and the Minnesota School Age Care Alliance, will be here to talk with us about early childhood advocacy, the upcoming legislative session, and the upcoming census. And then in January, Priscilla Weigel will be joining us from the Center for Inclusive Child Care to discuss prevention of explosion in early childhood programs. As always, if you're interested in a previous topic, please feel free to reach out to us and we can send you a recorded copy of the webinar. We are in the process of getting those all up on the Child Care Aware website, so stay tuned for that. And lastly, registration for the annual conference for Manissim and SACA is open. That's one of the biggest conferences for early childhood educators in the state, so it's always a good opportunity to get together with people. If you're interested in that, visit the Manissim and SACA website.
Can you check that sound quality is any better? There's some questions after that.
Is sound any better this way? Sounds like we're having a few sound quality issues. I'm going to try a different way. I've removed my headphones. Is this working any better? Okay, wonderful. All right, good lesson for me to know. So this is just a little bit of information about Child Care Aware of Minnesota. We are a statewide organization that can help families find quality childcare. We also support early childhood educators through professional development, Eager to Learn, grants, the Minnesota Quality Rating Improvement System, which is Parent Aware. We have the Scholarships and Financial Support System for Teach and CDA, and Trainer and RBPD support. We aim to keep the community informed of the importance of quality child care. And this is who the team is. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we are joined here today by Corey Woosley, who's also a member of our team, who is excited to talk with you all about courageous conversations with you and your staff. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Corey.
Thank you, Kylie. So I better do one more hand. Can all you hear me? You guys check. Okay. Wait for it, she says. Okay, perfect. I didn't wear headphones. I would have probably not known how to put them on anyways. So let's go ahead and have some conversations today. Again, my name is Corey Woosley. I'm the Director of Workforce Development here at Child Care Aware of Minnesota, in addition to being faculty at both Minneapolis College and DCTC, where I have enjoyed being part of the field for, oh my gosh, close to, I think I'm pushing 40 years, folks. It's a long time. So I think the only one else out there that's been around that long is my friend Chris Bentley. Shout out to you, Chris. So, okay, so for today, I have 3 objectives that we're going to get through. I hope to get through anyways. I want us, number one, to recognize your own personal strengths as a problem solver. So you will see that throughout the webinar today and throughout the TEL Talk, I may use a term that goes something like this: solve that problem. And when I say that, we're going to spend a few minutes thinking about how we as directors and leaders and other stakeholders in the field can solve the problem. The second thing I want us to do is really define what are the problems that may cause some discontent with our staff. There may be more than one. For the bulk of the conversations today, though, I am going to focus on staff gossip. And I got to tell y'all, when Kylie threw out this WebEx yesterday that we were doing something on gossip, people really came. They came around, and I think we might have a gossip problem. So with that being said, the final one again is we are going to, say it with me, folks, solve that problem. Okay. Ready? Okay, thank you. So before we solve the problem and really dig into the content today, I want to just take a minute to think about your strengths as a leader or a center director. And I do want to just reiterate too, TEL Talks is designed for directors and leaders in the field. And I know we have some people that are family child care or maybe a parent, and I certainly think that this particular topic will be good for you as well. But if it seems like I'm a little director focused, that's because of what the mission of TEL Talks is. So how well do you listen? In order for you to be able to support your staff and to be able to think about what they actually need, you need to think about your own skills as a listener. And I did attach this inventory to the webinar, so you should be able to pull that out and do it. But Kylie's also going to do a few questions for us, so we're kind of experimenting with the poll. So wish us luck here over in St. Paul. But I want you to think, do you take time to listen? It's super important that as a leader of your program, you give your energy to the staff, and without taking the time to really tune into what they were saying, you can't move ahead and solve that problem. Okay, Kylie, are you ready? Okay. Okay, I cannot see anything, so I'm trusting you. Think about what you're going to say when the speaker is done talking. Oh, I know what I do on this one.
Yep, I do too.
All right, we're at about 60% have voted so far, about 2/3.
Do you want to report that in, or do you want me to?
Oh, I can. Well,
Okay.
you should, because you're microphone.
Okay, so I hear 60% are in, about 2/3 of you are saying that you,
80% say yes.
yes, you think about what you're going to say when the speaker is done talking. Oh my gosh, I fall into the nose because I am so ready to input my own ideas before they finish. That's not good. I think I just failed my own quiz. All right, Kylie, let's try another one. Oh yeah. Do you tune out people who say things you don't agree with or don't want to hear, or do you interrupt the speaker? I'm not a fan of the interrupter. I'm just going to say that while I'm interrupting your work here. Okay.
43 yes, 58 no.
Okay, so 43% of you feel like you're on the right track. Or what did I say that backwards? Okay, all right, so we've got some work to do. Hey, I'm just gonna tell you, if you get a chance to do that inventory or print it out and do it with your staff, I got an 11 the first time I did it. That is really, really bad. So and now I think the last time I did it, I had a 17. So you do have the opportunity to improve. I think a lot of it is just taking the time to think about these things and think about, am I listening deeply? Do I care what they're saying? Let's try another one, Kylie. I'm having super fun. Oh yeah. Do you allow the speaker to vent or negative without you becoming defensive or negative? Or, you know, do you fold your arms and get sort of that tense look? Maybe grind your teeth a little bit. I'm ad-libbing here. Yeah, tap your, oh, that's one. Yeah, you tap your foot. I have a funny story to tell about this while I'm waiting for you. So we were all thinking of Tug Care where we would get Botox. So you would never know what we were really thinking. We'd just go to Botox Friday. But that's just one way to solve that problem. All right, Kylie wants me to move on.
Exactly
50-50. You don't think you get that negative vibe, eh? Okay, let's try the last one. Oh. Okay, this one. So how many of you take the time to restate instructions or messages to be sure you were understood correctly?
So 86% said yes.
Oh my, 86%. I don't know if I'm buying this. I feel like you guys are a little overconfident in your skills. I mean, if y'all felt that good, why'd you come to my webinar? So anyways, 86%. Obviously, you are not married to my husband because we always have to restate what we're saying. So anyways, excellent work. So take a minute, go through the inventory, see what you think about how well you listen, know your strengths and weaknesses. And then, like I said, I was an 11. The last time I did it, I think I was an 18. I might have been a 17. But you can improve simply by knowing how well you listen. And that's going to be critical as we move into our next discussion and we start talking more about how we're setting the stage. So I'm ready, Kylie. Okay, so before we really dig into the gossip, which I know you're super excited and you will not believe the stories I have to tell for you in just a wee moment. So you need to think about what is your role and how are you setting the stage to prevent this? And again, I'm basing this on my knowledge of being a center director, of working with students, of working with the staff too. Not that we'd ever gossip here, but anyway, so in your own personal journey, I want you to think about, are you aware of the staff concerns? Because we need to know what's happening. And that's part of that listening piece too. Are you listening deeply? I went to a conference a couple of years ago and there was an award given out to this MCN Leadership Conference, and she won this leadership award. And what she told us there was she listened deeply. And ever since I heard that, I've been very intrigued about that, because I can hear what you're saying. I can hear people say, oh, I hear you. And I go, oh, yeah, no, you don't, because you just said, I hear you. But are you listening, and are you listening deeply? It makes a big difference. Are you aware of what's going on in your program? The next thing, in order to start on that journey to solve that problem, you have to have an open mind. Are you open to change? Are you open to relooking at your policies? Are you open to hearing what people say? As we move through, we're going to talk a little bit about policies and orientation and some things. But in essence, does your staff have the opportunity to participate in the creation of those? Because that's going to make a difference on the buy-in. It's very similar to when you have rules for children. When I teach at the college, I always tell my students, in order to have really good, solid rules for the children, you want to have them to participate, because then you get to say, holy buckets, Kylie, that was your rule you broke, not mine. Too bad, so sad on that one. So same with your staff, have some buy-in. Are you fair? And there's a lot of discussion about what fair is and what equity is in terms of how you treat your employees. Does someone who takes the bus and doesn't want to have to go out after dark have the same, do you have the same expectations for somebody who has a working car, does a great job, but they have to get to work differently? I think you have to really look, again, listen and look deeply at what is fair to everyone. The third bullet I have up there, which I feel like is one of the most critical is, are you okay making change? Are you ready to make the change? If you're not ready, don't have the conversations because you're just wasting time. The next one, do you have the power? A lot of you work in a multi-hierarchical, that's kind of a hard word to say, multi-hierarchical system where maybe you don't have the power. Maybe you have to go through directors, or maybe you have a board, or maybe you have an owner. But be sure you're going into the conversations with your staff, and you're going into these situations where you know what you can change. And then the last one is my favorite, and it's because I'm a risk taker. Sometimes I take a lot of risks that maybe I shouldn't, but in the end, it's what's the worst thing that could happen? If you're going to make change, if you're going to support a staff, if you're going to let them go, even in this time when our workforce is in pretty dire straits, what's the worst thing that can happen? The best thing that can happen is you have a better place for the rest of your staff, and you have a better place for the children, which of course is our outcome. Ding, ready to move on. Oh yeah, I'm not moving with you. Okay, so it is going to happen. You are going to have some problems. You are going to need to have a courageous conversation at some point. And I do want to just hit real quickly on the words courageous conversation. And people that have heard me talk before have heard me say this a gazillion times, is that I'm not a fan of, in fact, I think I stood up at a keynote or something last week and said, stop saying constructive criticism, because criticism is negative. So we aren't criticizing people. We're helping them to grow. We're helping them just to be a better employee. We're helping them hopefully to learn some lessons. So stop saying, I'm going to share some feedback. I hate feedback. Ugh. I mean, I don't mind getting it, but I don't really, anyways, I'm going to take myself off my soapbox there. So courageous conversations is much better than constructive criticism. So remember, it's going to happen. Always be prepared to treat your employees as they are trustworthy and worthy of respect. Don't create rules for employees when just a few people are causing the problem. Ooh, how many of you hate that? Like, you all get the email, or you all get in trouble because one person's late. That, to me, that's kind of a cop-out, again, in my humble opinion. So address the person who has the issue. It doesn't always require you to address all the staff, because then you're creating more of that atmosphere of negativity, which is really what we're trying to avoid. So Kylie, I'm going to do 3 more slides, and then I think we'll see if there's any questions before I get into more of the gossip piece, okay? You got that, folks? Questions abound. Okay, so we talked about a few things that are setting the stage and helping you to create that environment of positivity, to create that environment where hopefully you don't run into as many issues with your staff around professionalism, gossip, and different things like that. But the first thing I wanted to focus on is, what is your mission statement? Is it clear, and is it your driving force? So I've been out to several programs lately, and I do this along with this presentation, but I do it along with a team building activity. And we talk about, we bring everything back to your mission statement, or if your mission statement is sort of long, maybe it's your tagline. So when I was preparing this on Sunday, I thought, here at Childcare Aware, our tagline is bringing up what matters most. So we continually think about the work that we do here, and we continually think about the bottom line is what's best for the children. So obviously your mission statement, well, I sure hope it has something about children, because if not, you might be in the wrong field. But anyways, we'll go with that as they all do. So anyways, reflect on that. Think about how often you're sharing that with your employees. Are you embedding it in staff meetings? Are you using the language from your mission statement or your tagline in conversations? And well, oh wait, I got something good to say, but I'm going to hold to the next slide, or maybe even 2 slides away. How about your policies? So what I love, okay, there's 2, I can look at this 2 ways. I hate policies because I like to break rules. That's my number 1. I love policies because when I break the rules, first of all, it kind of feels good sometimes, but you know, those red lights, they really were meant to be run after all. Oh, I got my new HR person in here with us too. So I'm that funny. She's listening to me. So, but the red lights really, they were meant to be run. Okay, so do your policies clearly lay out expectations. And do you fall back on your policies? They are in place, so you can use them to support both you and so your employees can use them too. But what I wanted to mention specifically when we're talking about staff concerns and staff issues is, in your policies, do you include things on professionalism? It's really critical that you add that. I don't think we always think about that as a policy. We think about if you're late, well, that's professionalism, but are we really identifying it? Are we really saying that being late is professionalism? You know, when I teach at the college, I am one of the few professors in our group that say no late work. A lot of my colleagues say late work is okay. I really don't, because late work is something that will really help them as they become employees out in the field. So sometimes I bend because I am fair too. But on the other hand, getting things in on time is just one step. So think about your policies, think about how you embed professionalism, and I'll have more on that shortly. Okay. And then building on, so we started at a higher level with our mission statement, then we created our policies. And if you didn't create them yourselves, go back and read them and see what they say. So you are clear, and you might need to do some rearranging or rethinking. Finally, how are you onboarding your staff? If you're onboarding them, again, defining professionalism. I have one of my colleagues sitting in the room with me, Nikki Lepowski, who comes to my professionalism class at the college, and she talks about finding your North Star, and we spend some time, and she does this, and I just love it because it's really about seeing yourself as a professional. And so when you're in that orientation, first of all, you should bring Nikki out. Second of all, you should think about how you're defining professionalism and how you are role modeling how we do this. When we start talking about gossiping very shortly, because I know that's why you actually came, and I've been spending a lot of time talking to get us there, you need to make sure you're role modeling. Probably the biggest complaint I get from either my students or when I go out and work with staff to kind of build their teams back up is that we are working really hard, but our administrators and our directors are still gossiping, or our administrators and our directors don't feel like they have to follow the same rules. Sorry, people, I don't mean to be putting you down here. I'm just laying it on the line like I hear it. So, okay, Kylie, let's finish this last question, and then this last slide, and then I will, it's not the end, don't go. This is the last slide before I take questions. So, okay, so the next one I threw out there, and again, this is a shout out to Miss Kylie Cooper, because I know y'all came to her webinar this summer, was it, or September? In the fall, on Power to the Profession. But what I wanted to say here is when you're thinking about those 3 stages we just talked about, we have a super lovely, cool initiative going on in the United States right now called Power to the Profession. So go on to their website. I think I put it at the end on my resource slide. If not, y'all can find it on one of the old slides. And use their resources to help define the profession, to help think about what you want to see in your staff and what will exemplify professionalism. You don't even have to dig into everything on the levels, or you don't have to dig into how we want to pay them more. Those are all lovely things, but for now, what is a professional and what do you want to see and how do you get that way? Okay, Kylie, before we do our quiz, you want to see if there's any questions or comments out there so far?
So far, we don't have any at the moment.
Because I've been talking so much, you can hardly breathe. Yeah, please use the questions tab or the chat. We can't hear you when you're talking. We good?
I have a question.
Oh, okay, I got a question here.
So you mentioned the policies piece. How often would you recommend updating policies? So if you're having some of these professionalism challenges, do you make a new policy every time that there's a challenge, or what's the goal?
So I'm going to use our organization as an example. The question was, how often do we redo your policies? And no, you don't change your policies every time you have an issue. I think you can relook at your policy and see if it's addressed or not. However, I would suggest that you, much like a lot of our manuals and things, I would suggest you don't redo policies more than every few years. But make sure they're up to date. I think for many of you, you're going to look at them and go, holy buckets, I haven't done these since 2009. Or in my case, since 1983. So look at them because a lot changes. And if you see something, for example, we see this trend of power to the profession, now's a great time to pop in there and take a peek, okay?
We also question, can you speak to generational differences in the workplace and how that contributes to levels of professionalism or perceived levels of professionalism?
That's a really good question. And I actually have some information, or I have some information on that because I have, some of you have heard me speak on generations, but when I'm going to speak about gossiping in the next couple slides, I want us to, gossiping does not have a generational, it is not bound by one generation. What you may see is the way that we do it could be different. And I do have some of that. So Kylie, can I maybe hold that question and see if I answer some of those questions as we go through? Because I'd love to blame everything on the millennials, but since I birthed 4 of them, I feel like that would be unfair to blame it all on them. Yes. Oh yeah, because I'm looking over at you. Okay. All right. So I'll get on to that. So we have a poll again now. Okay, so Kylie's got the poll up. Is gossiping a problem at your center or your place of employment if you're not at a center?
Wow. Yeah, okay. We're at about 3/4. You've got a 70-30 split, 70% say it's a problem.
What did you say, Kylie?
70%.
OMG, Kyles. Like, did you hear the deets? That PS teacher, that preschool teacher, Marissa, was dancing with Big John on Friday at First Avenue on Friday. Totally. And Big John is married to toddler teacher Katie. Like, I can't even deal. Anywho, and that's why I'm late and you're out of ratio. And maybe the kids will be okay, but it's because Big John was dancing, like for realsy. So, wow, what just happened there? Besides me going into my Valley Girl Clueless conversation and having to read my script because I had to practice, how many people are affected when a short 20-second conversation like that happens? You don't have to answer, but I just want us to take a second. This, for the, let's say, there was Nikki and Cal were out in the hall getting the kids' coats on, so they overheard this. Corey was telling Kylie, and Marissa and Katie were obviously involved. So how many people are involved in a 20-second conversation? That's why we need to stop it, because we can think about everybody and what's happening to each and every one of those people as we go through. Okay, so it is critical for us to be thinking about how that's affecting our staff, how that's affecting our children. And I do have some other examples. So I don't really know Katie or Marissa or Big John, but in my dream last night, I was planning how to gossip with them. So, okay. Next slide. Yes, so don't be a gossip girl. And I apologize for putting girls. It could be, it was actually, I took it from a show. So if y'all have heard of the Gossip Girl show, it could be guys, it could be girls, it could be gossip grandparents. So a lot of people gossip. All right, so I'm gonna go to the next one then. So let's focus on what gossip is. Gossip is saying something, not necessarily in words. Not necessarily orally. It can be in words, written, text, email, InstaSnap, the Google chat, wherever you might find it. It's about somebody else. You typically aren't gossiping about yourself. It's talking about someone in the third person that you would not say, and that you would not tell that person what you're thinking, and you would not speak directly to that person. So there's several components right there in that. Another thing for you to think about is when in terms of the gossip that's happening, and 70 lots of percentage of you said that it was happening. So as you're analyzing your classrooms, where is it happening? Obviously, Marissa or Kylie and Corey were talking in the hall about Marissa and Katie, which isn't good because then we've just opened up the whole center. But where is it happening? Think about your center, think about your program. Is there an identified place? When I was a director, very often it was the staff room. Great place for gossip. Lovely things happen in the staff room. We were talking earlier here today about the playground and the clumping. Y'all know that term clumping, where people stand together and they talk to each other and they're not really supervising and watching the kids because there is so much wonderful gossip to share. I was telling Kylie and Marissa how I drove by a center the other day and there were people clumping. So I reached my arm out and waved out, "Who's watching the children?" And shortly after that, my 22-year-old son, Thomas, said, "I really feel like they're going to call and say there's a predator on the loose." But I was just looking out for the kids, man. So the crazy redhead hit Chaska. Actually, I was in Chan at the time. But so think about that. We know the playground. We know staff room. When else is it happening? Oftentimes it's happening outside of the program too. So I have an example of that in just a minute. Another one thing I want you to think about, because we talked about a lot of gossip happening through social media or on the phone. What is your policy about bringing phones into the classroom? Many childcare programs do not allow telephones in the classroom. I'm a huge supporter of keeping the phones out of the classroom. First of all, there's issues with data privacy on that and taking pictures of children, as well as you're not really watching the kids if you're watching your InstaChat. Okay. Next one, Kylie. Okay, so you have evaluated your program a little bit. Let's think about why people gossip. Do you have a gossipy Gus or Grandpa Gossip, Gossip Girl, whatever we want to call them? If you do, just pause in your head, go in your little special place in your head for a minute and think about, what do you know about them? Do you see any of the items that I have in this slide? Do they want to make themselves better? Do they want other people to listen? Is it a habit? Are they afraid of something? Have other staff come up to you and talk to you about this person? Do you consider it bullying? Do you know this person who creates and fuels the grapevine, who complains about other staff and not doing their share? They're kind of I don't want to say negative Nellie, because Nellie really might be not negative. So just negative people. So you don't have to, obviously don't put their names in the chat box now, but I want you just to think about that. If you've identified that person, if you can think about it, how can you either help that person to grow or help change this habit? Okay, are we all on the same slide, Kylie? Yeah, I'm on the why do people gossip. I'm ready to go to the next one now. So as we prepare to think about the courageous conversations, I want you to also contemplate, are you guilty of avoiding? Because one of the things that we know and that we see is having these courageous conversations are hard. You might decide you're going to go back and use your policy, but your policy, as Kylie mentioned, might be outdated. Or you might not really have defined what a professional is. Or you might just go back because it's the easiest way. Policies shouldn't be the first line of defense. I mean, sometimes they are. Obviously, you know, safety and health. We want to kind of nip things in the bud pretty quick when the kids are running out on the road. But anyways, we also want to help the person grow if it's something they can grow. So don't pretend things are fine. We already talked way back at the beginning of the presentation about if things aren't going well, or if you're, are you observant? Are you aware? Are you listening? Do you know how to convey your frustration? If things are not going well, do you have a plan for what you're going to do? Avoidance seems to be the biggest issue. And when I see avoidance, generally that's when you're avoiding the topic. Generally, what you see is the staff room gossip or the playground gossip. If you're not going to hit the head on the nail, hit the nail on the, what are you hitting on the head? Hitting the nail on the head, then you're going to get the gossip, okay? I'm going to go to the next one now. All right, so aside from just your role, there's also the role of other people that are there in the program too. And so this is kind of about the bystander, and we hear the bystander all the time. You're the one that hears it and is part of it. So I want you to also think about how you're, not only what your role is and are you avoiding it, but what's happening to the people in your program. Are they confronting? Are they redirecting? Are they supporting? And here's one thing that I also hear a lot is I love conflict resolution. I love problem solving together. But when you put the gossiper or the person that is potentially bullying alone in the room with the person that is being bullied, you're just setting them up to fail. It's not supportive. It's uncomfortable. Nobody's, very often somebody's going to feel hurt. So what is your role in that, whether it's in mediation or in opening the conversation or finding out more information? But the whole idea, oh my gosh, we often do this with our kids too. I've seen a high school and middle school and even elementary school where we put these two kids in a room together that are being bullied. And I think, oh my gosh, who's learning what from that? So, and it's the same with adults. We hurt just like kids, man. It hurts when somebody's saying bad things about you. I know Marissa's over there going, I did not dance with Big John on the floor. People are making that stuff up. So she looks kind of hurt from here. Okay, so you want to think about what you're doing as far as the bystander and the person that steps or is with them. So I do want to just stop a second and maybe take not questions, but just a little bit of input, because I want to think about this generational piece that we talked about. In my humble opinion, I am HO. I don't know if I can go into my Clueless Girl Talk again because I don't have a plan, but it crosses age spans. It is not specific to baby boomers or Gen X's. It may be different. We may see a younger generation who is more apt to bully via technology because they know how, because quite frankly, I don't know how to use it. So I couldn't really bully somebody because I wouldn't know how to use it. But so I think you will see the difference there. But I would suggest that at 60 years old, I'm ever as likely to gossip as someone 40 years younger than me. So I don't think it holds age boundaries. Again, what you might see is how it is done. And then the other thing we know, and this is just from some of my bullying workshops that I've done in the past, is we do know that the online bullying certainly happens. It happens outside of the program. It happens all day and all night, and you can't get away from it. So it is very difficult for people to overcome as well. Kylie, do you have any questions?
You don't have any questions, but there is a comment comment right now from Kristen Wheeler Highland.
Okay.
Kristen, who shared that at the NACI conference last week, she attended a session from an attorney that shared that allowing staff to have their own phones in the classroom is opening programs up to legal liabilities at this point. So that's something good to think about.
Yes.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen, because I'm a firm believer in that, but I don't particularly want to come right out there and say that because you may have your own policies in your program. However, I say
Sorry, everyone. We're hearing that you couldn't quite hear what was shared. So Kristen Wheeler Highland again shared at the NACI conference, an attorney shared that it is opening a program up to a legal liability to have cell phones in the classroom in some situations.
Thank you. Any other comments there, or should I keep moving?
There's a question.
Okay.
Going back to what you said earlier, I don't know if you want to repeat this.
Okay, Nikki's got another question, or going to bring up a comment for y'all.
Hi guys, so someone had asked if the listening inventory had been used, not just individually, but if you've ever saw anyone use the listening inventory on another teammate instead of like for their own self-reflection.
So I've used it a lot. I have never exchanged it with someone. I would suggest that as a director, it could be a tool you use to share it with somebody. And you know, the reason I'm really comfortable saying that is because I did really not do well the first time either. It's not that I went in there and said, I'm an amazing listener. I want you to do this. Can you be as good as me? I said, I needed to learn and work too. And that kind of opens up that vulnerability as well. So I think that can be beneficial. I have another inventory, and I did this at the New Horizon conference, but I use this communication style, and that worked really well to help people think about how they're communicating as we go into these courageous conversations. So it was really big, but I'll see if I can upload it after this as well. Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am running down. So we're going to talk about courageous conversations now, and this is one of my favorite things to talk about, again, because they do take courage. To really have a conversation that's going to make a difference, you have to get prepared. You have to take a deep breath. You have to get your brave up. And you have to be ready to make that change. And it kind of goes back to that slide at the beginning where I said, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, maybe they'll punch you, but I don't think so, but they might. And so you get a little broken nose. What happens, man? I'm so over that. But anyways, no, Kylie's never popped me at the office. So,
Or anywhere.
Or anywhere, as a matter of fact, she said. So what's the worst that can happen? But, you know, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. And like I said, in this time of our nervousness around workforce, having courageous conversations means you also need to be prepared that that person may no longer stay with you. But in the end, think about what's going to be the best moving forward for our program. The first thing I wanted to bring up in regard to courageous conversations is around confidentiality. And I have an amazing resource for you too here. But when people are gossiping, it is a breach of confidentiality. You know, we take it lightly. We think it's teasing, or we think it's taunting, or we may, I shouldn't say we always take it lightly. We may take it lightly. We may, you know, dancing on the floor is one thing, but there are things that are impactful and hurtful and harmful. And it could be, it can be a legal matter. We look at some of the things around our teenagers right now and texting and some of that bullying, and that can be very difficult. I'm going to just share a very short story, and it's very broad because I don't want to share details, but probably 15 years ago when I was working in the field, there was a program in Minnesota where a child had an positive HIV status, and they opted to inform the parents because they wanted to make sure that their child got quality care. And, you know, and what we know about confidentiality is it's kind of that who needs to, or data privacy is who needs to know what. Well, apparently the director felt that more people needed to know than possibly did. And 2 of the staff members were in their small town eating at a restaurant, talking about it, and it got all over town. So where it wasn't confidential, the program closed, there were lawsuits, there was a lot of turmoil within the town, and certainly for the family had to move. And this was a long time ago, but within that story, we can see where if we're gossiping and we're talking about people, it is truly harmful. And I don't know that you want to come right in and tell your staff right away, you know, you're going to go to jail if you talk about Kylie anymore. But I do think when you see it as an ongoing problem and it is getting in the way of people doing their job and it is getting in the way of the health of your staff, then they need to know that they're doing something that is really incredibly wrong. Yes, Cal has a question.
Can you talk a little bit about that gray area between gossip and truth and what's to be shared? I know you talked about it a little bit, but in some cases, gossip can be just rumors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I find that some people find that, well, if I know it to be fact,
Right.
not gossip, so I can say it. So
Mhm.
talk about that within the speech.
Sure. So, yeah. So Cal was asking to kind of identify the difference between what is gossip and what is truth. Is that rumor?
Or is that in the appropriateness to share
Mm-hmm.
things?
Okay, so rumor versus fact and what is appropriate to share. And, you know, again, I can talk about this based on my experiences and my knowledge. But as a director, you know, you also need to intervene on that too. And I guess I'm of the opinion if it's not healthy for someone, it's not worth sharing, because I want us to always think about what is our role in the continual revolving conversation and where is it going to go if we are the first ones to talk about it. And then it also goes back to the confidentiality and the data privacy in terms of what do I need to know and who needs to know this to do their job. So, you know, what you're saying out with your friends is one thing, good or bad. You might have gossipy friends as well. What you're saying in your program is about what you need to do your job. So oftentimes it is a really fine line between looking at, it's a rumor, I heard this, you know, I heard Corey's going to quit. She's 60 years old, she's never going to get up those stairs again. So that might be a rumor, that might be gossip, but what is it doing to the health of the organization? So examining them and looking at it and thinking about, how do I need this for my job? So does that help at all, or?
I wanted to kind of throw that out there to the system,
Mhm.
such as people being mindful of what is theirs to share and what isn't.
Right.
And so, in recognizing that even though it may be fact, you still share it into gossip.
Yes. Yep. So I don't know if you heard Cal, but she just, you know, wants us all to consider as well, it's not yours to share. If you hear the story, whether it's fact or not, maybe I'm really going to retire, but that's my story to tell. And I say that a lot with my students. I say that a lot with my children. I say that a lot. I say a lot. So it's hard to define what I don't say, but whose story is it to tell? And you know what? Maybe you're saying something that's really important for them. Like when my son got married and he said, don't you dare post it on your Facebook. That's my story to tell, Mom. So I didn't. Okay. All right, let's move to the net. Thanks, Cal. That was a great thing to bring up. Okay, so now we're to solve that problem. So what can we do? Don't engage in gossip yourself. And I'm saying this right now. We can talk about telling your staff not to engage in gossip. You can sit down at a staff meeting and say no more gossip. You need to have ramifications for the behavior, but you also need to not do it yourself. Okay, and whether it's this rumor or whether it's, and you, I will say, I was a director for 12 years, you are the keeper of a lot of information. You know a lot of things, whether they're secret, whether they're facts, whether they're whether they're truly gossip, you are the keeper of a lot of that information. Zip your lips and throw away the key. It's really hard. I had to keep my mouth shut about my husband's birthday for 8 months. And I did it. Didn't I, Katie? Where is she? It's really hard to throw away the key. Be an effective communicator, choose your words carefully, and think about how you're talking to your staff people, okay? Communication is super critical in how you're gonna move forward with these issues and again, we're on this solve that problem. So, one of the things everybody says, every article I read said, tell your staff not to get involved. That's harder to do than you think. Because first of all, oftentimes our gossiper, as we know, is, an influencer, potentially popular. We like those stories, for crying out loud. They're good stuff. They entertain us at lunch. So you also have to work with them about saying, I don't want to hear that. I'm not comfortable with that. Enough already. Or whatever they want to say. I love Kristen's reminder about the telephone to get it out of the classroom. It's a problem. Okay. And then what is their line of action when there is an issue with a gossiper? When you have gossipy Grandma Gus, where do they go with that? Okay, so my words are really small on this one for me. So the other thing that I think it's almost the last thing I had, but was I do like to assume that everyone had good intentions. I have my Clifton strengths, and my second top strength is positivity. So I spend way too much time believing that the good in everybody. But we don't want to go in. We don't want to hire new people and throughout everything I said with your mission statement, your orientation. Obviously, you want to give them the power, the information they need to be successful. But I don't think you have to start by saying, we're kind of a gossipy organization. Let's sit down and chat about that. Assume best intentions when they come on. Make sure they have a place where they can get a break. There are people that need a break. And if they're afraid to say, I don't want to hear that from you anymore, where can they go with that? Create an environment that supports staff. And I did add in this slide, as well as children and parents. And I really did not get into a lot of the gossip about children and parents, but equally as important, same rules apply. If gossipy Grandma Gus is talking about the children and the families, equally as important, probably more important. I know one thing that I've seen when I've been to programs as recently as last week is that somebody's talking about, I call it the never-ending parent bashing, and they're saying something negative about a parent, and the poor child is right there. Well, if you ever told my boys something negative about me, I might have to punch you. So, they can come up with enough stories on themselves. They don't need any help. But please do not ever let your staff talk about the parents in front of the children. Unacceptable. Okay, and then the last one's just about not jumping to conclusions. Okay. The next slide is about, we do have a support in early childhood, and I just wanted to read, I had two, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'm running out of time, but in the Code of Ethics, I'm looking at the little book. If you haven't ordered the little booklets, they're 60 cents a piece. 60 cents a piece. Everybody should have them. But under P3, it's under the principles, P3A2, when we have concerns about the professional behavior of a coworker, we shall first let that person know. And if that doesn't work, then we go on and attempt to resolve in another matter. P3A3, we shall exercise care in expressing views regarding the personal attributes or professional conduct of coworkers. So right in our guiding principles, it tells us what to do. You don't even have to work on this. Put the code in your policies. Okay. So these are really very simple tips about having that courageous conversation. Plan the right time and place. Where are you going to do it? Obviously, you're not going to do it when the children are around. You're not going to do it when you're picking them up or when the parents are picking the kids up. You're not going to do it when they're racing out because they're racing out. think about if you're going to start their day with that news. Lovely. Welcome to the day. Has to be grandma. Let's sit down and have a courageous conversation. Stay focused on the issue. You know, you're bringing them in for a conversation. Stick to what the conversation is. It doesn't have, you don't have to include every single thing. Like, why did you wear and you wore sweatpants today for realty? I don't think so. Think back to how well do you listen, and then be brave. And then the final thing I wanted to say about the courageous conversation, and I apologize, I'm talking fast because I thought I didn't know I'd be able to have this much to say, for crying out loud. So recap and writing. We heard from you in the beginning when we did our listening poll that you already do that, but for that 20% of you that don't, or 30% that don't, you should always recap your conversations in writing. And that also goes to, did they really hear what you were saying? When Chuck starts talking about accounting, I hear nothing. I get the glass over my eyes. He needs to recap that in writing because I don't know what he's talking about. So recap in writing and make sure that they get a copy. And sometimes I even say, do you want to add something? Do you have any comments? But something that helps you to acknowledge that they also understand. So again, we talked about how we don't want to avoid the issue. So let's just talk about a couple things you don't want to do. We love our phones. We've now removed our phones from the classroom though, so we don't have to worry about that. Don't deliver bad news via email or text. In fact, if you have bad news to deliver, or if you're going to have a courageous conversation, make sure they understand in advance that you're going to have this conversation. Don't bring them in and blindside them. Don't avoid it. Make sure you have the facts. Again, don't assume your message has been heard, and recap it. And finally, going back to that beginning slide about parity and fairness, don't assume that one size fits all. Okay. So we had a lot of conversations. Your homework is to revisit your mission, revisit your policies, think about your orientation, think about how you're including the NECE Code of Ethics. Your other homework is to make sure you're being brave and preparing yourself. Share the listening inventory or take the listening inventory with your staff. Do it as a staff activity or a meeting, or hopefully I can figure out how to upload my communications thing. This is actually one of my very, very favorite quotes of all times. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. So Kylie, I can take a few questions. I know we don't have a lot of time. If we don't, I can also email people back, but I'll take some questions. But I truly want to thank you all very much for coming. And I've enjoyed talking with you, listening with you, and sharing information with you. You're doing amazing work. Do you have any questions, or are they mostly comments, or? No questions. All right, that means I covered everything. So this will be available for them to post, or for them to review? Okay. And Nikki will follow up with an email with information. So thank you all. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Corey.
Woohoo, we're done.